Hey everyone, welcome again to another 360 Timmy. So this week I'm on my final minisode of the winter season, and as you can see I'm outdoors finally again with the 360 camera. So this week I want to talk about something called the algorithm. Now, what is an algorithm? As a YouTuber I hear this word a lot. Basically an algorithm is some elements that I put together for a successful video. So I have to think about what video I'm going to make, what topic I'm going to cover. It's going to be something that I can start the video and hook you in so you watch more after the first 10 or 20 seconds. When the video is complete, I'm going to have to think of a title. So when you type it in a search bar, it's something that's going to pop out and you're going to go, oh, I'll have a look at that. And I've got to put a thumbnail together which kind of draws you in, because again, if you're going through thousands of videos, an image or the first couple of frames of the video are super important. So that's an algorithm. Algorithms come from the mathematical and IT world, and you can think of them as a recipe list, if you like. So I've got 2 eggs, I break them and beat them together, I put them into a hot pan that's at the right temperature, and I get a perfect omelette. That's an example of an algorithm. Each of those elements can be tweaked. I can turn the heat up, I can have more eggs, I can add a pinch of salt. So you get the logic of what an algorithm actually is. And I got thinking, actually, your life is a bit of an algorithm. So what are the elements that have kind of made my life what it is today? I mentioned in a previous video how when I started out my career, I couldn't have imagined where I've got to now. Lots of what I do now didn't even exist. The internet wasn't really a thing. The kind of role I do wasn't very well defined back then. It's a completely different world. So what I thought I'd do in this video is kind of piece together what I would call the algorithm of my life. And maybe it's an algorithm that could be used in your life. There's lots of videos on YouTube at the moment with young people looking to talk about self-improvement, be it fitness or mental health. And I guess, as someone that's lived a bit longer, I've got the benefit of hindsight on a lot of that. So really, what I'm talking about here are some things I found in retrospect that worked for me. So what are the foundations of my algorithm? What are the things that make me in my life? And I guess first and foremost you have to start with family. The family you're born into, the parents that bring you up lovingly, which I've had, and the influences from generations of your family. There's also friends, so the friends you meet over the period of time and shape your outlook on life. There's also memories that influence you going forward. You enjoy things from the past and you think, I want to do that again. So I guess that's another key element as well. And enjoyment is absolutely a key part of your life. You need to make sure in everything you do, you're enjoying yourself, because life is too short really, isn't it? So they're the kind of foundation elements. And then you've got the practical things like career. So once you leave school, there's an aspect of making sure that you have a profession, as they used to call it, a set of skills that's going to earn you money for a very long period of time. And also challenge as well, because if we just went to work every day and did the same thing over and over, I think it'd be pretty boring. So let's look at those individual elements. So family is obviously a foundation to your life, because that's what you're born into, and not everyone's lucky enough to be born into a family with mum and dad about. I totally get that, and there's always different circumstances, but essentially your family are there for you to guide you, to shape you, and if you're very lucky you'll have all the things you need to get yourself started. Okay, I wonder how well this is going to go. Oh. So I came down to film this today because I love this part of Sussex, around Camber Sands. There's normally a massive mile-long sandy beach out here, and I guess you've got the word, haven't you? Life is a beach. Well, today there isn't much of a beach because the tide's in, and I didn't really bank on that. I should have worked that one out. So life starts with family, but really your mum and dad are the starting point of your life. You look up to them, they shape the way you start out in life. They're not necessarily the full answer for you, because you'll have elder members of the family that come from different generations, and I think different generations are certainly something I value as well. I value the opinion of family members and their outlook on life, and you kind of balance it. You go, maybe I wouldn't take that approach, but some of what my granddad says, some of what my dad says, a bit of what my auntie says, that's a good way forward. Because the thing is, your life is something that is constantly changing, and you have to remember that. Who you are right here and right now, and who you'll be in 10 years' time, can be completely different things. And that's the beauty of life. As I mentioned in a previous video, I've certainly seen my life change completely from where I thought I'd be. So family in the sense of the unit you grow up in, and then of course as you get older you start to form your own relationships and have your own family, and you might have children as well, and increasingly so you'll still rely on your parents, your aunts and uncles, grandma and granddads, but obviously over time those relations pass away, sadly. That's the circle of life, and you're there bringing up your own children perhaps, or you're married into another family and you're bringing someone else's children up. It's all part of that kind of rounded thing that makes you. It's not the whole answer, of course. I would say also friends are super important, and throughout your life you make friends in a variety of situations. So for me, of course, like everyone else I guess, you might start making friends in play school, primary school, secondary school, and then before long you're moving on to the adult world. So you're going to college or university, or you're starting your first job. Suddenly you're working with a completely different age group, and that's quite unusual for you because you've been so used to, perhaps for 15 odd years, being in the same age group and the same outlook, and suddenly you're now a bit like the family. You're working with people from all kinds of backgrounds that have different outlooks on life and different histories. There's plenty of bad people out there, as we all know, and there's plenty of bad people that become good, and they're all life lessons, I guess. So I'd say for me, that's been a theme of my life. Certainly my first job at a cinema, I made very good friends with people from all different age groups, and I have done to this very day. I mean, 16 to 85, 90 I think is my current age group of friends, from all kinds of backgrounds, and they're all unique. As I said, you take it all as a ingredient and you decide what you want to mix in your life. There's a thing you have to get used to though. Much like with family and friends, sometimes friends and family fade off into the background and never come back, and they come back later, after 20 or 30 years, and you pick up where you left off. That's always important. I've got a lot of friends who I see 2 or 3 times a year, and we always joke, we've known each other for 30, 40 years, and we always just pick up where we left off, and we know each other's outlook on life, humour. You never run out of things to say. So these things are certainly very important, and that starts your memories off. As I mentioned earlier, you as a child, you'll think about bad memories and good, I guess, and you process the two together. I had nothing but good memories, I have to say. There's very few, I'm lucky, very few bad things have happened in life. Obviously, bad things happen to all kinds of people, right? But I've been very lucky in that sense. But memories shape you, experiences shape you. I'm very nostalgic, I have to say. Maybe that's a handicap sometimes in terms of my outlook on life. I think about how things used to be instead of looking in the right and now or looking ahead. But memories are important, and they certainly shape you. And you'll do things like I've done with my kids. I think about experiences I had, and I want them to experience the same. And maybe when you go to do it, it's not quite what you thought it would be. I certainly remember things like camping. I was very excited for that at the time, and as you get older you realise camping's cold, damp and wet, but you just remember the fantastic experiences. I mean, I went on holiday with my parents, and it was amazing. We could have a television in our tent because my dad had found this thing you attach to the car battery, and that was wonderful. We could have a television in the tent, and we could watch stuff on holiday. And then the next day, he went to turn the key to the car, and of course the battery was flat. So there's examples of things that don't quite go according to plan. But certainly, you can say that's a key part of your life before you move on to the next level. You leave school, you've got your profession under your belt, you've got your exams, or you've got an idea of what you want to do, and career is very much the next part of the ingredient list. So if you ever watch the IT crowd, you'll recognise this building. Actually, I used to work in this building a couple of years ago. So, career, super important, obviously. You have to make the right choice at the start, at college, university, school, or apprenticeships, which I really believe in. I'm not a big believer in university, sorry, but I do think apprenticeships, or those early careers opportunities are worth their weight in gold, but they're important because you need to get your foot in the door at the start of your career. Once you've got your foot in the door, you can progress, and then you'll have the confidence to move on to a different role. Now, you might take a view that you want to stay in the role that you've trained for. There's nothing wrong in changing your mind later on and thinking about a different career. So that's always an option. I talked in a previous video about how my career's gone completely a different angle from where I originally saw it being, and I am actually very happy with my lot at this moment. I mean, I have had years where I haven't been happy. I was always a dreamer. I remember being 16, I had a kind of a dream about what I'd want to be doing in my life, and ironically, without setting myself a goal to get there, I did actually get there. So that's always, I guess, important as well, because I hear a lot about people setting goals and that being super important. I don't disagree, but you put yourself under a bit of pressure if you go, by the age of 20, I want to be earning this much in this kind of role. It doesn't always work that way, because there's always challenges, right? Like where we are at the moment with companies coming off the back of the pandemic and really suffering a bit in terms of budget. Progression in companies isn't quite so easy. Sometimes when you go for promotion as well, your pay increases aren't great on progression. If you go into a fresh new company, completely different story. So that's something to obviously think about. I'd always say as well, it's worth getting yourself a mentor, because that's super important at every stage of your career. You should never be embarrassed to have a mentor, even later in life, at the next level, or just someone that thinks differently from you. That's always, I think, super important. So picking a good mentor is definitely something I'd recommend, and it works well for the mentoree and the mentor. Is that the right way of saying it? The mentor, yes, sorry, the mentor and the mentoree, because you both get something out of it, because there's something to learn on both sides, right? Certainly when you start a new career, you want the benefit of experience from people that have been there for a few years, but you've got new ideas that you want to test. So it's always worth thinking about how you can work your knowledge of a firm or a career from a mentor and put your own spin on it. So give you a pathway, like that, we're walking down a pathway now, a pathway to being something different. At the start of my career in the civil service, I did a very bizarre course on internal marketing, and I guess at the time you would have thought, why does a civil servant working in IT need to do internal marketing? Well, I learned so much from that course that's really stood the test of time for my career. One thing that I do all the time in all my jobs is I'm very lucky to enjoy it. That's super important in a job. Enjoy what you do, enthuse about it, talk to people about what you've done, big up the team, big up the work that you do, your contribution. Sometimes you can be in roles where you think, what is it that I actually do for the planet, the people? And you've got to work out what that is and enthuse about it. So I always have a big kind of internal marketing thing going on with myself. Now, that's not me bigging up myself, it's me bigging up the work of the team and what they do. I think that's super important. And it kind of builds up a confidence in people that you're both interested, you know what you're talking about, and you're engaging with the business that you're working for. So try and always think about ways of marketing yourself and your team in the workplace. Now, I mentioned courses, again, super important. I've talked before about some roles where you need accreditation. So things like being an electrician, a gas fitter, a plumber, oil and gas, that kind of thing. You have to have accreditations to carry out work now. And increasingly in the industry I was in, IT, you do as well. Certifications in this, certifications in that. Originally, that was pretty cool once you got that, but I found it a bit of a drag that every year you had to go back and re-qualify. And as someone that doesn't really like university and exams and things like that, that filled me with dread. So I kind of took a sideways step and went, I'm going to go for a career where I'm perhaps a little less technical, but I can be more managerial, do an oversight, deliver value in a different way. So always evaluate what it is you want to do, particularly if you've got an aversion to doing exams and accreditation. That's certainly something I'd recommend. Now, saying that, I mentioned before that I did a project management course, a Prince 2 practitioner. That's been super useful in my career. So I would say, obviously, things like that are important to get, again, a foot in the door. Will I need that accreditation ever again in my life? Probably not, because I've got to a level now where I've delivered so many projects. I show my worth in what I've done. I don't really need a piece of paper to prove that I've got that accreditation. Also, I guess now it's a bit more difficult for young people because you're sifted by a computer, and if you don't have certain qualifications and certificates, you're not going to get in. So look at other ways to get in, because companies recruit people by those kind of processes. But if you know somebody in that company, you can always talk to them and see if you can get your application reviewed or recommended. A lot of companies now do recommendation schemes where you can put your name forward as an employee of a friend, and it gets a bit more traction in terms of the application process. So that's something to think about as well. But your career really is a journey down a road like this. Sometimes, as you can see on that far over carriageway there, there's roadblocks, and sometimes you can take a turn down a clear street and turbocharge your career somewhere else. But really, it's just important to enjoy your career, because if you don't, you're a long time in something that you're doing 9 to 5, Monday to Friday or weekends, if you're unlucky enough to do that, and that's rather dull. So you should always try and make your job enjoyable as well. It doesn't matter what it is that I've done, and I've done retail, I've done interesting things like the job I do currently now, but I've always found something about it that I can take away and enjoy, so it doesn't get to me that I've got this job that's pinning me down Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, or in the evenings and weekends. Try and find a positive in something, otherwise you're going to get in that slippery slope of being depressed and unhappy with your life. And as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of opportunities to change, take a different route. You've got to take a risk sometimes. It's not easy giving up a job when it brings, it puts a bit of bread and butter on the table, as they say. So obviously you've got to take a balance, but it is kind of super important that, again, you take a challenge and you look at different avenues and take a risk, take a punt. And the amount of times I hear people saying, oh, I've got that new job I went for, but I'm not sure it's going to work out. If it doesn't work out, or I could always go back to my last job. You should never think like that. You should just go for it. It's a bit like jumping off a diving board. Once you've jumped, you're only going in the pool, so you might as well swim. So, challenge. Well, that's a key one, not just at work, but also in your personal life as well. So, we've all, I guess, slipped in what I call the comfort zone. So, you can think of this in a kind of fitness terms. When you're quite young, you're always going to the gym, you're always worried about what you look like. You get to a certain age where you give up on that, and quite frankly, you reach for a cake, and you start getting overweight. Then you get self-conscious, then your mental health goes down the drain, and you're in this kind of tailspin of going to the gym and trying to reclaim the years. In life, it's like that. If you get too comfortable with life and career, you really get stuck in a rut, and that's something you want to avoid. So always challenge yourself to do something new, be it at work or in personal life, and don't be anxious. I've talked a lot about mental health in a previous episode. I certainly suffer from it myself. The word anxiety is a bit overused these days because some of your anxiety is what's called the human condition. As humans, we can be naturally nervous about situations like starting a new job, about getting on a bus full of people, walking in front of a crowd of people, going to a party, or things like that. That is the human condition. It's something you have every day. There's anxiety for things that really cause you upset, trauma, and I certainly accept that's something that needs a bit more thought, but you will have a degree of anxiety which is down to the human condition, and how you fix yourself from that is to challenge yourself. Problem solving is a great thing. Put yourself in a situation where you have to fix a problem. Don't just look at it and go, I can't do that. I don't know how many times I've said that in the past. I can't do that. I'd never do that. I remember talking once about the fact I would never get on a train and commute to London on a daily basis, and here I am. So that's an example of how over the years I've taught myself something different. So always challenge yourself. I think it's also important as well to have some form of hobby outside of work. So otherwise, all it becomes is paying the mortgage, getting the groceries, and nothing else. So get yourself a hobby. Maybe take up sailing in the great place you're at here. I've certainly found over the years taking hobbies, going to the gym, going to cinema with friends on a regular basis, content creation like I'm doing now, has kept me sane, quite frankly. So always think about that, always stretch yourself. And maybe in life, just like with a job, you take a view, this isn't working out for me right now. Do we think about moving home? Do we think about moving town? Doing something slightly different to change it up? Because as I talked about earlier, the person you are now is not who you're going to be in 10 years' time, or even 5 years. So constantly evolve, change, challenge yourself. It's super important for up here. I think they're rolling that red carpet out for me. So, enjoyment. Now, I think this is probably one of the most important things because, we're a long time dead, aren't we? So life is for living, and we should enjoy it as much as we can. And nowhere else in London epitomises that better for me than here in Leicester Square, because you've got cinemas, you've got radio stations, we've got pubs, all the things that I quite enjoy. And I think the key thing for me is that social life is incredibly important. It's a time to catch up with family and friends. It's a time for a reset. It's a time for you to take those stresses away from the aches and pains of your working life. Things get on top of you in all kinds of ways as you get older. Family issues come up, issues with yourself, health issues, all that kind of thing. And obviously work. As you get older, you tend to think, where am I going to go? Where am I going to end up? And this is a thing that's universal. It doesn't matter what age you are. You always have an interest, I guess, in where you're going to end up and how you're going to get there. And I think it's good to have some time out and reflect on things, but enjoy it while you're doing it. So the cinema for me is a perfect example of a place I can go where I turn the phone off, I can sit in darkness, and sometimes I don't go and watch a blockbuster. I go and watch an art house film, something a bit thought-provoking, something to take my mind off things. Films are good because they cover all kinds of topics, they go all kinds of places, and often you can go to a film and go, I can't really work out what this storyline's all about. But at the end, it all kind of kicks in and makes sense. But it's therapy. It's like going to the gym. It's like sitting in a nice jacuzzi tub or going swimming in the ocean. All kinds of stuff. So social life, incredibly important. Again, the word challenge comes up in enjoyment as well. So it might be you want to run a marathon. It might be you want to get to lift a certain amount of weight. It might be you want to walk a particular route. It might be that you want to build something. I'm useless at building, it wouldn't be me. It might be that you want to travel. So, as we're doing now, entering Chinatown, expanding your horizons, going to different places in the world and experiencing different cultures. These are all kind of enjoyments that put a pause on the stresses of your everyday life. And there's nothing like going out and eating out with friends. So I mentioned pubs earlier. If drinking's not your thing, they're glorified restaurants these days. So great places to catch up with friends, have a meal, have a catch up. I talked earlier about friends that I see only 4 times a year, and it's always great to just spend a couple of hours catching up on things, having a meal, having a drink, and putting the world to rights. It helps you reset. And again, we're going back to those themes earlier of getting different perspectives from people, their outlook on life. Certainly useful for your day-to-day struggles and stresses. So be more like this guy, have an aim and shoot that arrow and get on target. We've covered family, we've covered friends, we've covered career, we've covered challenge, and we've covered enjoyment. They're the elements of my life algorithm. And I only have one more question. Which way to the beach? So, life's a beach. I've always wondered where that came from. Is that because the tide goes in and out, just like it has for me today? Who knows? But I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever you want to do, and like and subscribe. And for now, you have a super day.